The Air We Breathe is made possible in part by a grant from the Victoria Foundation.
New Jersey has nearly 8 million residents. That means 1,000 people packed into every square mile, more than any other state in the nation. We also have 5.5 million cars, trucks, and buses, and we drive them 58 billion miles a year. Ever wonder where so much of our pollution comes from? Hello, I'm John Scott. In the next half hour, we'll try to explain how we got so congested, how we got so polluted.
More than anything, America represents freedom. And nothing exemplifies freedom more than the automobile and the open road. But in New Jersey, the road in many cases is no longer open, and our need to drive is affecting the air we breathe.
How did we become so attached to these machines?
Here's to the crabgrass, here's to the mortgage, in fact, here's to suburbia.
Lay down your briefcase far from the rat race where nothing can disturb ya.
The drive to suburbia is as old as this country. We have always been a people that prize country living. Now, if you go back to the 20s, there was an enormous out-migration.
But the rise of suburbia was delayed by the Depression and World War II. When the war ended, demand for housing and easy credit led returning vets and their families to the rural areas outside the cities. Through the 60s and 70s, people continued to flock to the suburbs, the result of an American phenomenon that continues to influence this nation even today, the baby boom. As the boomers came of age, the number of working adults exploded. Non-farm employment in New Jersey more than doubled, from 1.5 million jobs in 1950 to 3.5 million in 1980, with much of the growth coming from the addition of nearly 1 million women to the New Jersey workforce. But all of these people needed to get around, and in June of 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Interstate Highway Act, changing America's landscape forever.
A modern highway system is essential to meet the needs of our growing population, our expanding economy, and our national security.
The interstate highway system, the justification for it was principally as a defense mechanism, was implemented without any real thought to the growth consequences.
It opened up vast quantities of land for development, and people were willing to trade off time and route, the commute, for their perception of the good life out in the rural areas.
See the USA in your Chevrolet.
What a thrill to take the wheel of a rocket Oldsmobile.
While the highway system was a bonanza for the auto and trucking industries, it all but destroyed many of America's railroads.
In this country, the car is king. That's why we got rid of trains. That's why trains disappeared, because the highways became the fundamental method of travel.
And the suburbs continued to grow, while New Jersey's cities decayed as the blue-collar jobs that had been their backbone moved away. Then came the 80s, the information explosion. Not far from the finely trimmed lawns of suburbia, sprawling glass buildings appeared, filled with computer terminals, baby boomers, and plenty of free parking.
We grew so fast that we didn't apparently for a while care how we grew. We built houses in places that people never thought that there'd ever be houses.
From the business community, we were very happy to see the 80s. We did experience a tremendous amount of growth, and maybe all of it wasn't good, but clearly most of it was.
They went on and built and put communities as well as office structures wherever they wanted to, and in the suburbs, people wanted the sprawling space, and we weren't there, so it meant cars taking these people to work.
How many miles do you commute?
20 miles each way.
About 30.
106.
Most people like living in a suburban context, but it also had its own problems, and those problems were giving up of open space, the problems of getting into a car and having to drive an hour to get to work. And at some point, the balance tipped, and now people are saying there must be a better way.
Did we move here?
Don't you remember to live in sweet simplicity?
The president promised some new approaches to the age-old problem of pollution today.
When the first Clean Air Act was signed in 1970, America breathed a sigh of relief because we thought air quality would improve. In some cases, it did. Industry was forced to cut pollutants. Automobile fuel efficiency more than doubled. Tailpipe emissions decreased. But the population continued to grow, and so did the number of vehicles. The Clean Air Act of 1990 includes further limits on big industry, but some of the focus has shifted to smaller businesses and to the driving habits of Americans.
Industry has made tremendous improvements in air quality. We have, in fact, ratcheted down 95, 97% on emissions.
I think it's gotten better, but we're still not in compliance with the federal health standard that was set some 20 years ago.
This is Los Angeles, the worst air in the nation. New Jersey is not far behind.
This is the new Federal Clean Air Act, which will attempt to fix our nation's air quality. 350 pages, thousands of regulations for hundreds of pollutants. But number one on the EPA's hit list for New Jersey is ozone.
What is ozone? It's part of the atmosphere that protects the ultraviolet rays coming through.
It's formed by pollution, and it's bad for you.
The good ozone, bad ozone story has really complicated matters a lot. And it is true, there is good ozone and bad ozone.
Ozone gas in the upper atmosphere, which is formed naturally, is sometimes called good ozone because it protects us from the sun's ultraviolet rays. Scientists believe man-made chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons may be destroying this protective layer of ozone. But the most pressing air pollution problem for New Jersey is ozone gas in the lower atmosphere, sometimes called bad ozone or smog. This gas has the same components as good ozone, but is largely man-made. It is the bluish haze formed in the hot summer months when motor vehicle and smokestack emissions mix with sunlight here at ground level.
It's like photochemical soup. All these things are cooked by the action of the sun and produce new and far more harmful pollutants. Ozone is one of them. It's one of the most toxic substances that we know.
People don't understand air quality. However, on a day where we have high ozone levels, when a lot of people think that they're being irritated perhaps by an allergy or a cold, it's the air quality that could be affecting them.
Officials estimate that 20% of ozone emissions come from stationary sources like power plants, refineries, and industry. 30% comes from a variety of smaller sources like auto paint shops, dry cleaners, and petroleum-based cleaning solvents. These are called area sources. But at 50%, the largest by far is the mobile source, motor vehicles.
The problem really isn't commerce. The problem is the individual workers, each getting into their individual car and driving to work individually in areas that are not served by public transportation.
Trucks and buses, a major source of diesel pollution, are not a significant part of the ozone problem. That's because they run on diesel fuel, which does not evaporate the way gasoline does. In fact, cars don't even have to be running to be polluting. Maybe you can't see it, but right now the sun's heat is evaporating gasoline from the tanks of these parked cars.
And there are other sources, depending on the weather. Some of New Jersey's ozone-producing gases don't even originate in this state. They literally blow in with the wind.
Ozone air pollution doesn't respect political boundaries, so we We get the effects from downwind states, if you will, from Pennsylvania and from the west, and so we're importing pollution, but we're also shipping it north and east of us. So what we're doing is impacting on New York City and on Connecticut.
Because of the interstate movement of ozone, as seen in this EPA computer model, where orange and yellow indicate high levels, the new Clean Air Law mandates that states which share ozone pollution form regional commissions to fix the problem. And ozone is not the only difficulty. Some areas of the state also fail federal standards for carbon monoxide. And again, motor vehicles are the primary source.
Who's to not say that in 20 years we'll discover that our children's lung capacity is significantly decreased because they grew up in a lifetime of bad air.
Wait for the big breath in. In deep, come on, quick. Forward, push, come on, that. Push, 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 squeeze it out all the way, all the way, all the way out. In deep, come on, quick, all the way in. And blow it out.
This is the breathing center in Morristown. People with serious lung disease turn here not only for medical treatment, but also for support and guidance. For them, living with air pollution is a daily struggle.
If you have lung disease already, the ozone may make it seem that you're having more bronchospasm or more asthma attacks.
The air quality on when it's bad, it's a rough day to go out for anybody that suffers from emphysema or any chronic respiratory disease.
The goal of the Federal Clean Air Act is to improve air quality so that all Americans, healthy or sick, can go outdoors without gasping for breath.
There are several perplexing facts that have come up in the last 5 years or so, and that's a very significant increase in the death rate among asthmatics. I think that air quality plays a role in this.
Carrie Padfield has suffered from asthma for 10 years. When it's hot and smoggy outside, she can be found inside, breathing medicated air.
If I didn't use it, I would get worse and worse until the point where I'd have to go to the hospital or something because I couldn't breathe. When you get asthma a lot, you have to fight that and say, I'm okay, I'll be okay. I have asthma, but I'm okay. I have trouble breathing, but that's just the way it is.
Because their survival depends on it. People with respiratory problems learn to cope with New Jersey's air. But new studies suggest that healthy people may also be at risk.
And blow out hard now, blow out hard, now keep it going.
This is the University of Maryland's Environmental Exposure Chamber, where scientists use this machine to create their own ozone. In this specially built room where pollutant levels can be controlled, healthy volunteers exercise while breathing the level of ozone the government says is safe.
The more someone is exposed to ozone, the lower lung function will go. The acute drop in lung function will go away, but lung inflammation persists. A deep lung inflammation persists.
Ozone is a severe chemical irritant of the lungs. It actually causes respiratory burn.
And then it takes about 3 to 4 days for all that condition to clear up. There have been summers here where there haven't been 3 and 4 days between the next assault.
And then we worry about little children because they can also burn their lungs if they exercise a lot during high ozone levels.
At the very least, we should all achieve compliance with the current ozone standard.
But ozone is not the only factor in the real world outside the laboratory that can affect air quality. Ozone is at its peak in the summer, when thousands of people also suffer from allergies. In addition, we're exposed to air pollution at home and at work. All of these pollutants affect us differently, depending on whether we are young or old, healthy or not.
Because there are no easy answers, some business leaders are beginning to wonder whether the cost of clean air is too high.
Dollar for dollar, it would be cheaper for us to send everybody that had a respiratory problem. We could relocate them to Bermuda with the amount of money that it's going to cost to meet the standards.
I always am a little skeptical when people talk about cost analysis when it comes to the health of an individual. In retrospect, it's obvious that asbestos causes lung disease. It's obvious that cigarettes cause disease. But it wasn't obvious at the time. It was simply that these things sometimes don't show up until a decade or two of exposure.
Maybe you think New Jersey's air quality is not your problem, that the government should fix it. But in the new clean air law, each state is responsible for cleaning up its own act. The threat is real. 1/2 of New Jersey's federal highway funding could be in jeopardy if we don't comply.
They could take $2 billion away from New Jersey if we do not make significant progress in reducing our air problems.
New Jersey will be forced to take some drastic measures. If you drive to work alone in this state, you may be one of the first targets.
Just can't wait to get on the road again.
People are not in love with their cars. If you don't have a car, you're a second-class citizen in New Jersey. So whether you love your car or you hate your car, you need your car, and that's why people drive.
I'm a manager. I work odd hours. It would be difficult for me to be in a carpool.
I guess I could take the train more, and just a matter of personal convenience.
Meet John Powers, traffic engineer. He's counting vehicles on one of America's busiest stretches of highway, the Route 1 corridor near Princeton. Rush hour traffic here is so heavy, even the shoulder is used. Now, the Department of Transportation is studying the possibility of adding a lane here for car and van pools. Using this device, Powers registers single-occupant vehicles, two-person cars, and carpools of 3 or more. Can you guess which button gets the most action?
That's single-occupant vehicles. Right now, I've got 120 of them, 15 twos, and only 3 carpools. We're looking to find ways to reduce the number of vehicles. The best way to do that is put more people in a car.
You can't build enough roads anymore to meet all of the demand for all of the automobiles going all of the places that all of the people think that they need to go.
In the early 80s, the state tried HOV, high occupancy vehicle lanes, but the plan was dropped because not enough people were ride-sharing and the lanes were underused. But now, if states want to receive federal funds for newer expanded highways, HOV lanes must be considered. In fact, ride-sharing lanes are being studied for Routes 80 and 287.
We're not going to be able to build our way out of the problems we have, either by building more highways or even building more transit. We're going to have to manage our way out of it.
The real key for our competitive industries as they compete in the world is going to be the efficiency of our transportation system.
The new Clean Air Act marks the first time the federal government has ever mandated that Americans change their driving habits. Large employers must begin making plans to reduce the number of cars people drive to work. So, get ready to share the ride.
People have gotten spoiled, basically, and believe that they have to have their car and drive alone to work.
We don't think our car is really a contributor. We're a small part of the problem. People believe that. I believe that to some extent. You know, look at all the factories, and is my little car going to do this? Well, little parts add to big parts. I think we deny it because we don't want to deal with it.
But the auto industry claims that our driving habits need not change drastically, and that cleaner air will evolve over time.
85% of the emissions from vehicles in New Jersey are actually coming from pre-1982 cars. So that as the fleet turns over, those cars, of course, will be replaced by the newer, cleaner cars, and I think you'll see a dramatic improvement in air quality.
But it appears New Jersey and other Northeast states are not willing to wait. Under the new clean air law, states can choose on their own much more stringent limits, which have been adopted in California.
The California standards were developed specifically for the state of California, for the geographical concerns, for the meteorological concerns. They don't necessarily apply to those same conditions that we have here in New Jersey.
There's bright people in Detroit who can make good cars. They just have to be pushed in that direction, and I think these standards will do just that.
But stricter standards, new fuels and engines, will not unclog New Jersey's roads. One look at John Powers' rush hour count shows that people may need to change too.
You ever miss any?
Gotta miss a few.
This is Route 1, 15 miles up the corridor. This is Route 130, And this is where they meet, North Brunswick, a town that has 28,000 residents and 120,000 non-residents that pass through every day. Town leaders didn't need a study to know that something had to be done.
The builder said, well, it's not my problem. The business and industry portion said it's not our problem. The people in the township said it wasn't theirs, until we all sat down and realized that everybody contributes to the growth and everyone contributes to the rush hour problem.
So town officials and local businesses got together and came up with New Jersey's first traffic management ordinance. The law requires North Brunswick companies with 50 or more employees to survey workers and reduce vehicle trips through ride sharing and flex time.
And what time do you usually arrive at work?
Using information from the survey, Mike Kish, New Jersey's first municipal traffic manager, coordinates and enforces carpooling.
In North Brunswick, it doesn't really cost a lot of money or time to do these programs. For people to carpool to work, it doesn't cost the state a nickel.
In Trenton, Senator Walter Rand, the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee, wants to use North Brunswick's ordinance as the model for a statewide law. Rand first introduced traffic reduction legislation in 1989.
We got resistance, very frankly, from a lot of segments about mandating the imposition of traffic reduction. Now we are forced to do what we wanted to do voluntarily.
Rand's proposal will call for businesses with 100 or more employees in congested areas to survey workers and make trip reduction strategies.
As much as we can do voluntarily, as much as we can do on a cost incentive basis, then there's less kicking and screaming. But when we get individuals being forced, it won't be business forcing them, it'll be government forcing them.
This might look like a typical corporate meeting, but profits and sales are not the topics.
Vanpool to help air quality. You'll get home guaranteed.
This is a staff meeting at Morris County Rides. Known as McRides, this nonprofit group is one of 7 transportation management associations, or TMAs, in New Jersey. TMAs are matchmakers.
We will actually take your commute information and then send you a match list if there's a match. And then we'll even help you arrange that carpool. We also do van pool formation and market public transit service, because we do have public transit. In the last couple of years, we've put over 350 people on public transit. It's amazing. People don't know that the bus or the train can service them.
This van pool, at 7 years running, is one of the state's oldest. The original members formed it themselves. Today, McRides refers new commuters as seats become available. With 12 riders from around the state, the commute begins in Middletown, goes up the Parkway to Sayreville, and then to Piscataway. After that, it's on to the final destination, the Prudential Office Park in Parsippany.
The commute was killing. This is not even like a commute. I get on, I fall asleep, I get home, and it's great.
It was the happiest day of my life, because I commuted for about 2 months, and I was a maniac when I got to work, and I was a maniac when I got home.
I used to see an accident a day, and I got to the point where either I had to change jobs or let somebody else do the driving.
The van is great because you can sleep, and I like to sleep.
Here's the cost rundown on Joe's van.
Take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy.
It's a good way to travel. You compare it to one person in a car, there's night and day difference.
At Chubb Insurance in Warren, ride sharing and flex time are just part of the traffic reduction plan. Workers here have plenty of incentive to arrive early, stay late, and drive less.
This is a business decision. We have got to do something. If we don't do it ourselves, it's going to come at the direction of the state and the federal government. So you might as well, you can't lick them, you're going to join them.
While some companies are making work more like home, others are making home more like work.
This is the Kenilworth headquarters of Sharing Plow. And this office belongs to Elaine Job. Just because she's not here doesn't mean she's not working.
I think we should plan to have Dr. Blum with us and somebody from regulatory.
Elaine was ready to find a new job because of her daily 100-mile commute. Today, she is the company's first telecommuter. She now spends most of her work week here, in her Princeton home.
It's a program where you work from home. You telecommute over this thing and that thing. Last September, I resigned because my commute was so long and took a position down here in Princeton. The last day after my farewell party, the vice president of my division came in and asked me what he could do to keep me. And I said, move shearing within 5 miles of my house. And he said, how about to your house?
We thought very highly of Elaine, and I really was concerned about losing a very good employee.
Where there's a phone, there's a job. Companies come out ahead because the employees tend to be more productive and more satisfied with it. And for the telecommuters themselves, there are tremendous savings in commuting stress, commuting cost, and the big benefit of having a more flexible work style.
In the office, it's so convenient for people to stop by and answer a question that could have waited and stay for 5 more minutes to chat. So I get more done here. Come on, guys. I also have the incentive of wanting to be finished to visit my garden or tea. Out here. Take care of the dog.
Like many problems of modern society, there is no single answer to New Jersey's air quality dilemma. Some experts liken New Jersey's traffic congestion and pollution to the garbage crisis. Our landfills were overflowing, so we began to recycle. Now our highways are overflowing, and we need to reduce the number of cars on the road. Government and business will play important roles. Technology will help. But people contribute significantly to pollution. People breathe it. And people must do their part to help fix it. Thank you for joining us. I'm John Scott.
Here's to the crabgrass, here's to the mortgage, in fact, here's to suburbia.
Lay down your briefcase far from the rat race where nothing can disturb ya.
Uncomplicated, it's what we waited for so long in this city. Come, let us go there, live like Thoreau there, to live in sweet simplicity.
The Air We Breathe was made possible in part by a grant from the Victoria Foundation.